It's time for Hykeem Williams to make his mark as a Florida State Seminole.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. And today, I'm going to be on my soapbox about a few players that have to really step up and make it happen this spring. We'll talk about that in just a moment. At the back end of the show, we've got a lot of recruiting information, including more official visits. I'm very happy with where Florida State is standing in recruiting. That's good news, especially with the O-line front. There's more good news there. I'm surprised by how fast they're going. And also, how do they get it to the point where it's year in and year out with recruiting being top 10? We're going to talk about that as well. But again, first off, 4 players for the Noles that have to get it done. And there's no doubt in my mind, number one is Hykeem Williams. I went back through the numbers, and I had forgotten how much he'd been beat up last year, missing time, etc. Going into his 3rd year in Tallahassee. He's a physically gifted young man. He has a lot of spirit. He's got a lot of talent. And now he's experienced. He's seen the upsides and the downsides of college football. Now is the time for Hykeem Williams to emerge at Florida State. Thomas Castellanos is an experienced quarterback. I know he's new to Tallahassee, but he's a kid that can really throw the football down the field, and Hykeem's a deep ball guy. They should mesh. On top of that, they've got a plethora of running backs. They'll be able to hit him on some play action because they're going to run the ball. Micah Pettis, all the new offensive linemen. They got 5 seniors that are projected to start up front. I know, again, a lot of transfers, but Herb Hand has done this before. Gus Malzahn's offense will find a way to run the football, play action, deep shots. That is a great recipe for Hykeem Williams to be successful. And if the Noles are going to be good, we all know Duce Robinson's going to do his thing. But to keep double teams off him, Hykeem's got to be able to rotate in for him and also move around. Spring ball isn't just about running routes and catching passes. It's learning the offense, being able to play different positions. If a guy like Duce has to miss a game, sprains an ankle, can he take over for him? All of these things come into play. And it also means the little things. This is where I really want you to pay attention. Does Hykeem up his level as a blocker, catching the football and securing it right away? Just really little things that are detail-oriented. I know they're boring. I know coaches harp on them, but it's the difference between winning and losing. I like the winning better. I will speak for Hykeem and everybody on Mike Norvell's staff. They prefer to win too. If he sets the example because of the physical gift that he is, and again, a veteran, this will be year 3 for Hykeem Williams at Florida State University. It will help change the wide receiver room, which quite frankly last year was a disaster. He is a veteran with as much talent as anybody in the roster, Duce Robinson included. Can't teach the 6'2", 6'3" frame, 215, built like a racehorse. We knew a long time ago Hykeem was going to be a guy in Florida, and he was recruited by everybody. Miami, Florida, Florida State, everybody wanted him. The Noles got him. They need to get him up to par. Here's a couple of things that are interesting about his season last year, and this is kind of indicative of Florida State in general. He missed 3 games due to injury, Georgia Tech, BC, right off the bat. And once we got to the Duke game in the middle of the season on the 18th of October, he only had a grand total of 6 catches from the Duke game on. Didn't have a catch against the Canes, didn't play against Notre Dame. And although he had 2 catches against Charleston Southern and 1 against Florida, which he played, he really wasn't a guy that was consistently effective throughout the season. His only touchdown was against Charleston Southern. That is shocking to me. He had 16 catches for 187 yards. Florida State must have Hykeem Williams take his game to another level, which I'm sure he understands. He's physically gifted enough. He has a great year. He could turn pro after this year. It would completely change their offense if he does. And he's not alone. We're going to talk about 3 more. Another one that is a fascinating player and maybe the most intriguing in all of college football this year, because he's going to play both ways potentially. He's definitely given a look to do so. And he's such a young guy. He should be a true freshman this year, but he enrolled a year early at Florida State. Amaree Williams played tight end last year, going to get a look on defense to be a pass rusher. I don't know if he's going to share the same spot with James Williams or if they're going to use Williams in different roles. But if Amaree plays defense, how much does he play tight end? When I say he needs to have a big spring, because he was pretty good as a freshman, considering it's more about physical development right now. Track was something I watched him do as a junior in high school, like 11-1 in the 100 meters, so like 215 pounds. He could run. But now it's about staying in shape cardiovascular-wise while still putting on good muscle. How he sleeps, how he eats, all the little details of that, there's that word again, details, is huge. If he's going to try to play both ways, even in some capacity that's small, maybe he plays 5-8 snaps on defense or something, I don't know. That is very important. He's going to burn a lot of calories. How he prepares himself now in the offseason, going into spring ball, is incredibly important. He has a chance to be an NFL player. Obviously, we're waiting to see which spot it's going to be. I think he can definitely be a tight end that makes the NFL because can't teach the God-given ability to run and jump like he can, and he's got good hands. He's got a chance to be a pass catcher. The defensive side of the ball is different. It's about power. It's about strength, to shock somebody on a run play and not get run over and hold your own. And as an athlete, he's going to be able to pass rush. Again, setting himself up with good cardio right now, going through the offseason conditioning, as well as adding a little bit of weight. That's hard to do. But he needs to probably add a few more pounds and definitely lean out his body, just become more powerful. If he does that, he should have a good spring. So I'll have to kind of watch his reps and how they do it. But Amaree Williams is a stud athlete. Florida State's got somebody that has a chance to play in the NFL. I'm really curious to see how they use him. And even if you didn't like Florida State, that's a kid you'd probably enjoy watching if you're just a college football fan. Third, somebody I've loved for a long time, but it's time for him not to be good. It's time for him to be Florida State's next guy at corner. Quindarius is that guy. Look, I'm not saying that he's the only possible answer. I could have went with others. Maybe Kai Bates takes that step. I don't know which guy it'll be. I've kind of debated on this, but Quindarius is a little older, and I thought he had some really good moments when guys were out of the lineup. Length, 6'1.5", give or take, 6'2", out of Mississippi. He was a kid that was overlooked. I love it that he has a chip on his shoulder, but has made it work. And finally, I think he's pretty physical. Something I talked about on yesterday's show, Florida State's physicality last year, from a consistency standpoint, stunk. I can't stand that, especially a school like Florida State, who used to drop the hammer on defense, just so physical. Now you're seeing that pick up a little bit. I've heard good things about the offseason. Coaches are getting after on the recruiting trail. They're bringing a different mindset on defense, all the things that I like to hear. But if Quindarius has a really good spring and takes himself to that next level, I'm not saying he's got to be Azariah, but it'd be nice. If you can take away the other team's best receiver and you set that precedent again, it'll help recruiting. It'll help you win games. It'll help other guys that need more help than him, because I think he can be your dude at corner. You can change how you play defense this next season. I don't know if he's going to be that guy, but he's my pick, and it's based on what he's done so far, having a couple of years of college football, and I just like his athleticism. The fourth guy is somebody that I think it's as much need as it is talent. Remember, Florida State is going to a three-man line, at least part-time. They're going to be a hybrid defense, I think. We'll see how that works out. They could obviously switch around and do different things, but Coach White's defense usually uses a three-man line. KJ Sampson is a guy now that really should be an important factor for the Noles. He'll be year 3. It's 320, something like that. Can he play some strong side end and goal line and situational defense? That's important. Obviously, he can play nose at that size. Does he take to that role when he has the 2 gap? Is he only going to be a guy that accepts playing at 1 gap and go? Everybody has to adjust to this defense, and it may not be for everybody. They need to find out where he is. Kevin Wynn's coming in. He's going to play. I guarantee you. Daniel Lyons is a guy. But if they can get somebody as big and naturally powerful as KJ to buy in, he's got a ton of talent. He's recruited by everybody out of the state of North Carolina. It changes Florida State's front. Just like Quindarius in the back, just like anybody else that's just a big-time player at their spot. The other team's got to kind of look, say, okay, we know where that guy's lined up. We got to shade this way or look that way. If you have that player and he can command double teams sometimes, take pressure off other players, up his snaps, Florida State defense can go from, quite honestly, below average for much of last season to a team that's feared again. I've said it before this spring. It's about getting better, and they should be pointing towards a top 25 defense. If Florida State doesn't finish the top 25 defense this next year, something is wrong. They have a ton of injuries. It is what it is. But barring that, the size they have up front, they've got the body types to run Tony White's defense. It's shocking because usually when you go from 4-3 to 3-4, that doesn't happen. The Noles have it. Having a young guy like him help guys come along, like Kevin Wynn, another guy very similar built, Daniel Lyons, you got DeAndre McCray, Diamante Diggs, obviously Daryl Jackson. You have all those guys rotating. When somebody gets banged up, they've got to have a young guy ready, and maybe he even pushes for a starting role. I don't know, but he has the size to do it. Not many guys over 300 pounds are like KJ Sampson, and to be really honest with you, he's a guy that Florida State needs to win because they need high school guys, not just transfers, to show their wares to help them long-term as a program. When we come back, we're going to talk about the recruiting shift, how they can get things going again. And it starts with some good news on the official visit front. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering, refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. For me, I just bought a desk that I have in my front room, just about done putting it together and trying to figure out how I'm going to organize everything for my new computer setup, getting everything put behind it. But I got it for under $130. It looks really good, and it's exactly what I wanted, delivered directly to my door, and it's free delivery. So Wayfair set me up, and it can set you up as well. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now, wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Florida State has several players setting up official visits, and it's just keep rolling along here. They're ahead of the curve for where I thought they would be with OVs. Point blank. I'm right here to admit it. For those of you watching on YouTube, I'm raising my hand. I did not think they would be at this point. Not even close. Good for them. And a big part of it, as I know many of you and I discuss in some capacity or other on YouTube or other places, O-line is a part of it. And yippee. Look, they got to win some of these recruiting battles for O-line, but at least they're getting them on campus. That's the first thing. They got to win them. But you got to get them on campus first. So here's an example. I knew there was going to be several schools come after him, and it's because of his size and his upside. Xavier Payne's committed to Florida State, but that hasn't stopped anybody from coming after him. Here's his official visit list. Penn State, May 16th. Arkansas, May 30th. Syracuse, June 6th. Do not discount Syracuse. They have a great recruiting staff. Georgia, June 13th. And then the Noles, June 20th. He's out of Jones High School. He's 320 pounds. He is a power guy. I think he can end up at guard or right tackle. Reminds me a little bit of Micah Pettis in terms of his style of play. Xavier Payne is a big dude. Florida State needs to be able to run the ball better, just put it mildly. That is what Payne will be able to do best, I believe. And long term, this is a guy that Florida State will have options at multiple spots. Love that. Florida State cannot lose this kind of kid, especially like Syracuse. It's one thing if Georgia were to somehow flip him. Syracuse, that's no good. I know they're doing better, but I'm not buying it. Arkansas, same thing. Penn State's the intriguing one. They've done a really good job with their O-line room. They got a good O-line coach. To the state of Georgia, this is another good sign. You hear me talk about this a lot, and it will continue. Jordan Smith, safety, 6'1", 185, Houston County High School, Warner Robins, Georgia, in the smack dab middle part of the state. He can play. National Top 100 kid by 24/7 Sports. The Noles have an official visit per several different sites. 24/7 is where I read it first, but again, while the competition is stiff, this is a good sign. If you're not going after the best, are you really going to improve as a program? No. Georgia, May 31st. Georgia Tech, June 6th. Florida State, June 13th, Tennessee, June 26th. Look, they're not going to get away with just running away from kids or schools in recruiting. That's not the era we're in. You're going to compete. You got the 2 in-state schools in Tennessee. That's about as tough as it gets for a kid in the state of Georgia. But that's what Florida State made their living on. That's how Bowden did it. That's how Jimbo did it. If you're going to win, you must win these recruiting battles. Now, there's one other kid, and this one's intriguing because of the 2 schools he's got lined up. Another kid I saw on 24/7 on 24/7 Noles. JJ Sparks is 6'4", 300, plays at the Bowl School. It's one of the best programs in the state of Florida. It's been awesome for decades. It's a boarding school that a lot of great players came out. Chipper Jones also came out of there, if I remember correctly, the Hall of Fame baseball player. But Florida State on June 20th and the weekend before, the Miami Hurricanes. Irony? Yeah, there's a little bit there. Florida State, like many other schools, wants to get better up front. And Miami's gotten there. They were in the same spot in some ways that Florida State was, that they flipped their room pretty quick. I give Alex Mirabal a lot of credit. He's an excellent O-line coach, good evaluator, understands how to balance the portal and all that. When he wants an O-lineman, especially an in-state kid, my ears perk up a little bit. The radar goes on, if you will. Him and Herb Hand wanting that same kid, that'll be a really good recruiting battle. I'm curious to see if Florida State can reestablish itself at the high school level with O-linemen. Sparks is a really key kid, and that's the same high school as Naeem Burrows, Simeon Caldwell, and Lord only knows how many other players coming out of there that are underclassmen, et cetera. I can't remember all of them. Jacksonville is the tip of the spear, if you will, yes, pun intended, for that corridor. Remember, I talk about it all the time. The I-10 corridor for Florida State recruiting, Jacksonville to Mobile. That corridor, every single year, has to improve from where it's been over the next 2-3 years to get it to probably where it needs to be and then maintain it. Right now, they've got to do better, and they're in on a bunch of them. They're in on a bunch of them with official visits, but they've got to get it done. On that point, when we come back, we're going to finish with thoughts about how they can improve and consistently have a top 10 class. This is something that is fascinating to me because I talk about it in general, but Michael Langston on On3 War Chant did a good job on an article, and I want to expand upon it. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. This is a really fascinating topic. What would you say is the best way for Florida State to consistently have top 10 classes? The easy answer, as stated by yours truly, as well as Michael Langston in this article, is pretty much the same. The first thing is win. It's kind of catch-22, though. How do you win big without great players? Got to develop. You need a few breaks. You need some guys have some big moments to win close games. But after a 2-10 season, it would help if Florida State to solidify the guys that get committed, as well as fortify the class with some flips and some wins down the recruiting stretch in November, December, if they won football games. That's the obvious. Let's just get it out of the way. I'm not going to expand on that. But what else can you really do? He was right. His first thing he said was player development. That starts this spring. I've talked about getting a bunch of guys in March. They got to do it. March 22nd is their big recruiting weekend. They're going to have the top guys come in from the South. Kids from Alabama, from Florida, Louisiana, Texas, everybody will come in. But I imagine it'll be more local than anything because it's still unofficial. These are not the paid-for visits. Those are the kids, though, that will come in and see these spring practices. And to that point, I want to read. I've got it on here, a text message that I got from somebody that is helping control the recruitment of a player that Florida State definitely wants and definitely needs. Great guy. And he's trying to help this kid out. He works at his school. He says that he wants to see how the defense at Florida State looks and how the new scheme works. I'm not going to name the player, the coach, or anything like that, but that's a very valid point. And I would imagine that the vast majority of Florida State's recruits this year are going to say the same thing if they're an offensive or defensive player. You got a new coordinator on offense, Gus Malzahn. Tony White takes over on defense. Numerous staff changes, front and back office. You're going to want to see it for your own self, with your own eyes, in your own time. March is the month. February, for those who don't know, February is a dead month for recruiting, no visits, etc. So it won't be till March till we get more kids on campus. That's why a lot of this stuff is being discussed right now in regards to visits. It's just more texting, phone calls, DM here or there, high school coaches exchanging messages with the recruiting back office at Florida State, Miami, Georgia, wherever, to set these visits up. I was told by him that like March 12th or somewhere they're going to go visit Florida State as well. And there'll be some other visit weekends possibly, but OBE is probable, but they want to see it first, some of these kids. So while Florida State's lining up some of these visits, player development, seeing it in practice, talking to some of the players this spring will be huge for recruiting. I think that it's imperative that they get a bunch of these guys in for the month of March. The other thing, I've talked about this the other day, and I just want to reiterate it. You can't just spend blindly with NIL. You got to finalize the deals, got to solidify your own players. Remember, there's another transfer portal window coming up after this spring practice, it's a 10-day window. Kids will enter. If you tick them off, if you don't pay them, if they've had a great spring, this and that, somebody comes after them, and it will happen. You've got to be ready to balance your roster. Keep players, add players, save money for the high school recruiting. It's a combination. How do you utilize your NIL? Really, really important. I think they need to have a few more of the quote-unquote high-level guys coming in this class. Florida State staff knows that. It's not a rocket science adventure. But they also know that if they're going to get it done, they got to pick their spots with some other guys too. It doesn't always have to be a 5-star. If you love a kid, you love a kid. That's one thing about Norvell to date. They go after the kids that they want based on their evaluation, and a lot of it's getting to learn about them. Those visits in March, those visits come into official visits, to families, the discussions. You go to the campus and learn about the academic program that you want to look at for a possible major, maybe 2 or 3 options. All of that is an experience that builds the bond long term. Norvell has that part right. They just put more effort into it. I don't think he did a good enough job for the vast majority of his tenure in Tallahassee with recruiting. I don't. He was too much, I can fix this. I just see raw talent, I'll fix it. It's not how it works. He needed more guys with polish. Higher ranked kids in recruiting are usually polished. Unfortunately, that means a whole heck of a lot more time spent on the phone, away from your family, and doing things most coaches, quite frankly, don't want to do. Too bad, do it anyway. That's where they're at now, or they're going to be gone. They know that. You can just tell by the effort. It's a whole different energy. I'm speaking to multiple people that cover the daily beat around Florida State when I was at Under Armour this past weekend in Atlanta. There's no doubt it's a totally different vibe. Curious to see how that goes this spring, because if it's as good as I think, from what I've been told, and some people I trust, I believe that Florida State will have a better spring recruiting situation than most believe, because they'll have even a few more elite players set up OVs for May and June. Those won't happen until late March to early April, because they got to go through spring and get their chance to visit. But they put themselves in a position to get there. They're working to get those young men on campus again in March, because that sets up the OVs. That's all you can ask for. But that's the final piece to the puzzle. If you can do that, then you have a chance to have those conversations about NIL and how you spend. It's easier to do it face-to-face. Like, look a guy in the eye and tell him what you think. Look at his parents, look at his mother, look at his high school coach. Get him on campus. The visit with the NIL is absolutely a 2 deal. It's not just one thing. It's dual. You got to have both. You can talk to them on the phone about it. I get it. It's 2 things. Face-to-face conversations, that handshake, it's important. You need to know where they stand. And I think it's best to cut bait if you don't have any kind of congruency with where it's at. Florida State has to be smart with their NIL, not just throw it out the window. If they lose a kid because of it, so be it. Don't ruin your locker room. So part of NIL is actually good when you don't win, because sometimes you win a battle, it's because you spent too much. There's a lot of give and take with that. That's something I'm going to talk about more and more, not only on this show, but my other show that just started on the Locked On Network, The Portal. We discuss recruiting, the transfer portal, and NIL every day. I had John Garcia Jr. on today talking about several different kids, some of which Florida State's recruiting from Alabama and Georgia and stuff. And to be honest, the NIL aspect of it is huge. When do you use it? Who for and why? There's a lot of moving parts there. If you get them on campus, though, having that conversation is a heck of a lot easier. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Make sure you check out Locked On ACC, the portal, all these different channels around the network. We're doing a great job putting together packages for you. It's not just Locked On Seminoles. We got a lot of stuff going on. Locked On College Football. It's a lot of fun to check out these shows. Hit the like button, notification bell, subscribe, and share the Locked On Seminoles podcast so I can get in front of more Seminoles. I will talk to you soon. Take care.